Thank you so much for joining us at the deep dive session on hunger hotspots and the Humanitarian-Development Nexus, agriculture research, and school feeding for global stability. I'm honored to be joined by an exceptional panel of leaders who bring diverse experience across research, operations, and humanitarian response. At this time, I'm going to invite our panelists that are here in person to join us here. Dr. Ibnu Dieng, Director of Strategic Planning and Chief of Staff at the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture, bringing deep expertise on how agriculture research strengthens food systems and resilience. We have Chris Greene, CEO of Meds and Food for Kids, sharing insights from Haiti on locally driven nutrition solutions that connect humanitarian and development work, especially through school meals. Virtually, we also have two that are joining us. Amir Abdallah, a commissioner with the Kofi Annan Commission on Food Security, joining us virtually, offering a global perspective on the evolving hunger landscape and the need for coordinated action. And Marek Kamalazadi, and if I've missed your name, my apologies, head of the Data and Monitoring Initiative of the School Meals Coalition at the World Food Program, highlighting how school feeding programs serve as both humanitarian lifelines and long-term investments in human capital. If you would just join me just for a second and just welcome our panelists together. Let's give them a big round of applause. Chris, we're going to go to you here. We've heard the word localization numerous times for obvious reasons. It's important. I think you have a lot of insight to share. And so how can locally driven, nutrition-sensitive approaches in humanitarian settings strengthen both, again, immediate and long-term solutions?
Yeah, thank you, Eugene. Thanks, everyone, for being here. I want to start off with just sort of painting the backdrop. So our Meds and Food for Kids works in Haiti. It's no secret to anyone that Haiti is facing challenges currently and has for quite some time. We're talking about right now that over 50% of the population is facing acute food insecurity, and over 50% of the food available in country has to be imported, right? Now, I like to tell a story of like when I go to Haiti and sometimes I'm visiting schools, it's so interesting to see on the outside, there may be roadblocks, there is diesel fuel shortages, inflation is rising, there's food scarcity, and you can walk into a school and you can see children all across the country eating this little school, highly nutritious school snack called Vita Mamba, which we make in Haiti. And this is so powerful to me because it really is a symbol of driving home just what can be done when we focus on localization. And what I want to really talk on is when we talk about this humanitarian development nexus, right? How do these two things come together? Why is it so important that we begin to focus our programs and our activities? Let's talk about humanitarian aid for just a second, right? In acute scenarios, it works wonders. We could not ask for better systems than the ones we have had in place, where an acute problem can show up overnight, and the next day we are there and we are meeting that need. But too often, unfortunately, that humanitarian aid persists and persists, and it actually doesn't end. And the very systems that the very crisis that initially addressed ends up becoming actually systems that create dependency and oftentimes actually create the very roadblocks to progress that we all want to see and hope for. We've seen this numerous times in Haiti and in other locations. And so what Meds and Food for Kids, what we have tried to focus on, we've been in Haiti for over 20 years. We have a staff of almost 90. All local staff. We're based in the north part of Haiti where we manufacture ready-to-use therapeutic food. So we sort of look at this and we say, what we have seen is that if we want to end hunger, we can't just say it's about feeding people. it's also about addressing the systems that are perpetuating these crises, right? That are allowing them to exist. Because unfortunately, the other challenge we see in humanitarian aid is that when the systems become dependent on it, and then what happens when the funding goes away, right? We see that now in ways that we haven't in a long time. We need to think about a more resilient, long-term sustainable solutions, right? How do we marry these two together? How do we create this nexus? And so what we do is we address the short term, right? We, in Haiti, we create ready-to-use therapeutic food. It's there to address severe acute malnutrition in children that are 6 months to 2 years of age. It is made locally, it's distributed locally. We make sure that those children that cannot wait receive that acute care they need. But we also look at it in a bigger, broader, long-term perspective. We work with farmers across the country. We have agriculture extension programs. We work with those farmers to, whether it be help connect them with research centers and partners in the U.S. so that we're developing varieties that are more disease resistant, more drought resistant. Now, that's great from an efficiency standpoint, but on the ground, when you're a farmer who doesn't have crop insurance, when you're a farmer who, whether or not your kids go to school, in fact, whether or not your family survives depends on what you are able to successfully grow and take to market, it's a very different ballgame. And I think many of us can connect with that, especially the farmers we would have in the room. In Haiti, we are trying to pursue the same things. You want to have dependable marketplaces, right? You want to have fair prices. You want to be able to work your land in a way where it continues to be an asset and not a liability. You want to be able to pass that on to the next generation. It's the same goals, the same pursuit of dignity, just in a different context, a different climate. So we work with these farmers. We help increase these yields. We help make sure the information and the knowledge is out there so that more nutritionally dense agricultural products make it to that marketplace. We then purchase those agricultural products. Through our factory, we produce not just ready-to-use therapeutic food, but Vida Mamba, right? Again, this school snack that this year we're on target, this 2025-2026 school year, we're on target for 70,000 Haitian school children to be receiving this every single day. This is an environment where a snack isn't just, oh, well, that was nice. These are oftentimes children that are coming to school. They may or may not have eaten that morning, and they may or may not have food when they come home in the evening. And then they're getting this locally made, locally sourced, nutritionally dense product, right? This is the power of localization. You know, one of the things, there's probably a few things I would love people to walk away with, but one of the things is that when we in humanitarian development, when we focus on building local capacity, it becomes development. When we bypass local capacity, it perpetuates dependency. We have got to continue to think about how do we ensure that the humanitarian aid that we need today isn't just addressing the crisis of today, but is also addressing this long-term need. And the research side, right? Again, collaboration with Vida Mamba was created in partnership with the USDA, with universities in the United States, with private partnerships. There are some amazing opportunities for us to work together in a way where we are still able to use our resources to support, but doing so in a way that we're ensuring that we're not, that we're creating the resilient long-term solutions internally. So maybe in closing, I would say that in fragile settings, the nexus of humanitarian aid and development is how we translate compassion into actual resilience. We need to look at things like school meals is not just charity, but is actually the creation of the infrastructure, right, that is needed for a better tomorrow. That agriculture is not peripheral to peace, it is actually peace in motion, right? We need to, if we say we want something, We need to pursue the policies and activities that actually will achieve that thing we desire. And I would say that when we're facing these complex problems and we acknowledge that they require comprehensive solutions, that they should be humanitarian when needed, always developmental by design, and local at every level.
What feels promising in your work during this time, but what would be the prophetic or the warning that you might give to an audience like us or to others who might be watching, including elected leaders of governments?
Nuance is critical. Let's just be honest, we live in a time and place where no one actually wants to talk about nuance in almost anything. There are very few things that are just black and white, that there are very few onions that just have one layer to peel, right? It's multiple layers. So I think nuance is key. I think curiosity, and I think humility. Because the other thing that we run into is we often assume, because we know more, because we've done more successful programs, that what we know and what we've done must just be the default best solution in X environment, right? I worked in Nigeria, and so of course it'll work in Haiti, right? So I think those things are key. I love that idea of nuance. I do think, depending on the environment, as you said, you're going to check all the boxes in some places. You're going to check some of the boxes in others, right? Is it filling a gap? Is it bringing more kids to school? Is it filling the gap, bringing the kids to school, and which allows mom to actually work more, increasing that family's income potential and possibility, right? There's all these levels that we should be asking and we should be measuring against. I think the opportunity and the risk. The opportunity is in the midst of, what they say that, in the midst of crisis is when we become our most creative, right? When we don't just rest on our assumptions and we go back to the table and we look at what we've been doing and say, is this really producing? My resources are scarce. I've got to be strategic on how I use them. So I think that's the opportunity, right? Right now we are talking about humanitarian aid and development nexus in ways we were not doing even 2 years ago. Right now we are talking about localization in ways that I almost never heard 2 or 3 years ago. So to me, those are huge opportunities. The risk is that in crisis, we like to take the shortest route to the solution that we want. And oftentimes that expedient solution, while it meets the need, it checks the box today, it does not build the systems that we need to make sure tomorrow is actually a better tomorrow. So our risk is we're going to have to fight that urge, and I'll give a quick shout out to WFP, because I think in Haiti, there's a great example of how this is happening. We have to fight the urge to just take the most expedient solution. World Food Program and MFK have partnered this year to increase the number of farmers being trained by about 960. Over half of those are women farmers, right? So this is in the midst of chaos, in the midst of turmoil, in the midst of uncertainty. WFP is doubling down with local partners to ensure that the systems that are needed for a better tomorrow are happening. The other thing is World Food Program has goals to have 100% of school feeding locally procured. Right? So again, doubling down that sometimes local procurement on day one is not as cheap or simple or easy, is just importing the solution. But importing the solution outside of acute crisis, I would argue, is never the answer, right? And so these to me are opportunities of organizations that are choosing, even in the crunch, even in the press, to make the investments that are actually going to see tomorrow look different than today.
Thank you to our panelists, and obviously thank you to the World Food Prize Foundation for allowing this dialogue to take place. Blessings to you.